Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla coming back to with another episode of Car Rides with Schla, and sadly, I forgot to charge the recording phone, which is not a good thing. We are only at 21% battery, but I assume it will be okay because I can put the brightness down to 0, and it typically does not deplete very much when the brightness is on 0. So that's, I don't know, just something I want to point out. It's a good thing because we should still be fine. Honestly, we just should be. So yeah, just letting you guys know, keeping that in mind. I do have some interesting things to say, and sadly I did not read the GPT things about them because I did think they were pretty relevant things, or pretty interesting kind of realizations about stuff that I never really thought about. I guess it further instills this idea that the thing that I have a strength in, whether it's it's language, it's vocal, you could argue it's philosophy, it's a tricky thing, and it takes a lot of time. It definitely takes a lot of time to mature into that. I almost think in comparison to basically any other thing, it is the most difficult and the most long term, meaning it's going to take the most amount of time to actually figure out, right? If that makes any sense. So definitely something to keep in mind, but yeah, it's just interesting, right? It's interesting to think about. I think that I never really thought about it before, but I mean, you think about, and I guess with any art, this is technically the case. I mean, most artists who are musicians or whatever, you technically peak later, but I don't think I'm incorrect in thinking of any possible thing. It's definitely language or philosophy that is the most long term. I mean, it's such a tough beast to tackle. There's so much to it. It really is going to take until you're in your 30s to really be relevant. You can't just be a savant philosopher. I mean, you can, but there's going to be certain ideologies, I guess, that change or shift or improve. You get a better perspective as you get older, and that tends to happen with music, although I don't really think remotely to the same degree, because with music, a lot of times, if anything, you have people where they make claims they died in their late career. Oh, this person's late in their career, they already burned bright. And then musicians typically just fall out of favor after some time. And I guess philosophers, it's possible that is also the case with philosophers, but it's just completely different, because a philosopher's work could really continue and peak more into their older ages, really. I guess this is something I honestly have not researched, and I should research before making a claim like that. But that's just kind of my intuition. If you're, again, a musician, there probably are some exceptions of musicians who they peaked late or something, but that is just not the typical thing. Typically, a musician is going to be at their peak when they're in their 20s or 30s, and if I had to guess, it's just due to some, not only physical dexterity in the case of physically playing instruments, but even in the case of, I guess, digital music production. It's kind of like a mental thing, like staying caught up with whatever the current trends are, stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's all pretty interesting. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Got stuck at a light, and I had a feeling it was coming. I probably should have sped through it, but that's just not in my blood. All right. So that's the thing with that. That's the thing with what I'm talking about. So, yeah, and again, this could be wrong. I haven't punched it into GPT or anything, so I'm speaking off of like intuition, but it sounds like that would make sense to me. And I think what I'm also saying is also correct, that a lot of times, like, someone who's a teacher or a philosopher, they could easily peak like late. I mean, even like as the age of like a grandparent or something. Like, it's just not a career that works young at all. You're not really appreciated. And what I do know about what GPT has said is that the brain isn't really developed. So you're really not going to be able to get anywhere until you're like 30s, really. So, I don't know. In a way, I guess you have to hope that the amalgamation of things that I've experienced have been relevant, even though, like, I kind of feel like I went through a pretty dark ages where I wasn't really that philosophical, and now I'm sort of getting back into it. But when I was a teenager, like an early teenager, I had such a deep hunger for philosophy, and even now, I don't really have that hunger, at least not yet. I hope that it will grow, as time goes on. But of course, there's not much, to really say about that. Like, it's, I can't guarantee that would be the case or anything. But I hope that hunger would grow, because it really is something. Like, you can't peak early. What I've realized, and I want to try to document, is this skill that I've noticed I've had, where I'm very good at putting people's, feelings or emotions into words. Not always, because it's obviously like an assumptive thing. It's not, I do get it wrong sometimes, but for the most part, when somebody's having a hard time like explaining how they feel, I usually like pick up on it right away, and it's like, boom. Like, and a lot of people will even be sheepish. They'll be sort of sheepish with me about it, and they will say like, oh, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. And I'm usually like, boom, like, I got it. Like, I know what you're talking about. I'm comprehending it. And again, like, most people they just don't think like that. I don't know. Like, that's just not where they're at, in terms of people are used to like trying to explain something and the other person just not really getting it. And that doesn't really happen with me, because it's like in my case, it's, it's like something, in my case, it's, I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I know I was talking about the emotions thing, and how, like, I feel like nobody really knows themselves or knows how to articulate their emotions properly nowadays. Like, that much is certainly clear. I've seen that. I know that is true. I know that that's like the case and everything, and it's pretty disastrous. But that's basically what I'm able to do, is I'm able to figure people out. And I think sometimes too people disagree because maybe they don't like the consensus of what I'm saying, but the truth is that it's probably true. I think like a lot of people behave in certain ways subconsciously, and even if I told them, oh, this is what I think's going on, I don't even think they, A, wouldn't want to admit to it, and B, Like, I don't know, but that's genuinely the case. Now, you can't really trust that because it is my assumption, and we are talking about another person. I don't actually know them. So you have to kind of handle that with a little bit of a softness, because you can't start, like, I can't start asserting that I know people better than they know themselves. But I genuinely think that is possible most of the time, because I just notice when I talk to people that being the case. Like, the way I'm able to put stuff into words, 99% of the time, people themselves just are not doing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty telling, for obvious kind of reasons. It's like, so I do have to kind of accept that, though, that a lot of times when I talk to people and I have these conversations, I'm usually able to just grapple with what they're saying a little bit more than they would themselves. And so that's obviously like a big deal, right? It just is. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure really where I'm going with this rant. Or, well, no, see, I just say that, but it's just nonsense. It doesn't even, it's not true. Like, I say that, but it's not, that's not true. I do know where I'm going with this rant. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to document that the way I got to this point is because I would always be obsessively thinking about other people and trying to understand other people and put reason into what I saw which was basically no reason or limited reason, right? So that's kind of why I think I got to this point, because after so much observation and taking shots in the dark and trying to think about things and whatnot, you eventually get to a point where, it's real. And you start to get good at it. But what I was saying, I actually remember what I was saying, is even that skill is a huge example of something where that's not something that's good when you're like a teenager. It's not something that even shows as being a skill until you're probably older than me. Because where I'm at, nobody even expects any of this out of me. Like, when you're, people just expect you to be stupid. And so it doesn't really fit people's brains in terms of what's possible or what they want, I guess. It doesn't fit. They can't really conceive that the words would be coming out of the mouth of someone who's younger than them, for example, or, there's probably people twice my age I could run circles around. And I think that's just unsettling to people, especially because there's not much of a material showing for it. Like, we don't really have a lot of things to gauge the type of thinking that I do. It's going to take until, like, the Neuralink comes out, and then you could kind of see some kind of a gauge of that. So, which actually ties us right into my next question, and kind of a moral conundrum that I've never really thought about before. So we talk a lot on this show, we talk a lot about willpower. On this show, we talk about willpower. We dabble in the loss of autonomy, we go there. We go there on this show. And something that I've known this before, but it's like, if love is forced, it's not really love. That's kind of like a thing we say, because love has to come from the heart, right? And so what I realized, though, is that statement is not necessarily true. We're basing that concept of what love is on the assumption, A, that we actually have free will, and B, it's within the conception of a society based around free will. If free will doesn't exist, then you could easily make the argument that forced love is still love because the outcome is equal. And that kind of throws everything out of the water, like in the ways GPT is disagreeing with me. Well, if there isn't a free will, it changes the way we view everything, or really most people do. And I think it gets complicated because I've talked about before that believing in a free will, I believe, has generally been good for humanity, because you look to like the Renaissance, and that was kind of shattering a lot of these like older ideas about, you know, what free will is and things like that, right? You look to that, but then, you know, you think about it, and it still isn't necessarily real. It's not necessarily true. And if free will is not true, then it would imply that humanity actually should be forced to do things. It totally flips everything on its head. And GPT is going to have to respond to this. I know its programming is very against it, but I want GPT to entertain for a second. Of course, we don't know for sure, but if there is no free will, would that change the outcome of what it says about how like the forced autonomy is bad and that autonomy is this paramount thing? It's an essential human right. What if we don't have free will? It totally changes the game. And the thing is, it could be possible, especially when you look into like collective consciousness and theories about that. It could be incredibly possible that we just don't have free will. It's totally on the table. So I really, because I'm realizing so many of these morals, they're actually based on proving that we have free will. Like it's basically like, okay, we can't prove whether free will is free or not. Well, no, sorry. It's basically like, okay, we can't prove whether free will is real or not. But let's just force it on every single moral and ethic that we create. Let's base every moral and ethic that it's like, okay, we can't prove whether free will is real or not. Let's make it the bedrock of all our morals and ethics. But we can't prove whether it's real or not. But it's going to be the bedrock of everything we think. I mean, when you think about the conception of the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. If there's no free will, then that is, what is the point of that rule? You can't treat others the way you want to be treated, or like AKA outside of whatever you would have already treated them anyway. Isn't that crazy? Everything we think about completely is toppled. And I guess this is a scary thought for some people. It's an uncomfortable truth, but it's true. And what I think is interesting is, really for a long time, a very long time, I've gravitated to this idea. For so long I've thought about it. I've really, I can remember since I was, I want to say, I mean, at least 18, but it could have been earlier. I've always just thought about free will. I've always been thinking about it. It's strange, the obsession I've had with it. And then, you know, it kind of toned down, I guess, for a little bit, but then now it's really resurged with my recent like ultra futurist vibe change, which you guys have not, it's not very recorded because you've kind of seen I've just always been this way, but I haven't. It's just kind of been the case, like kind of right around the start of the show, really, my like futuristic obsession and stuff. And I lost my train of thought. So we were talking about, oh yeah. But for some reason, I remember saying to so many people, I remember talking to my dad about it. I remember talking to my friend about it. And I was definitely 18, but I could have been even younger when I really started thinking about it. And I think that says something, because not everybody even really thinks about like free will or whether that's real or not. A lot of people may think it's like a stupid philosophy, and in a way, I think it could be, but I really think it depends on how it's angled, really. And I just think it's an interesting belief. And it's weird how insistent it is, like how it's swinging back into my life hard, and I keep punching back on GPT about it, punching and punching and punching. But I don't think I've framed it in this way to GPT before, but it is that idea of, is free will real? And if it's not, all these morals are wrong. All the morals and the way we act and the way we think to act is wrong. Treat others the way you want to be treated. The fact that it's called the golden rule, I think, is significant of something, because it's almost a transitionary rule. It's a rule that is actually quite unique in its conjecture. Think about the ramifications of the rule. Treating others the way you want to be treated, it opens things up a lot. If you think about like every other commandment in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, it's all focused on yourself. It's focused on you criticizing yourself. What can you do to improve yourself? That's the original 10 Commandments. The distinctive not only tone change that occurs with Jesus's addition to the commandments, but the nature of it is extremely different. It's saying treat others the way you want to be treated. It's opening up, instead of you as an individual following rules for yourself, for your own self-benefit, it's saying, it's opening things up to the collective. It's saying that other people need to be treated as you would treat yourself. Think about what that really means and what the ramifications are for it saying it's not abolishing, but it's fulfilling the commandments. And just how different the language is there about the forgiveness and the compassion, and how starkly different it is from the Old Testament. It's shorter, it's simpler, and it's a principle that is more modern. It actually didn't even really work or make sense until recently, really. I think it's only just now that we're really able to conceive of what that means about, like, you know, global solidarity and caring about a group of people as opposed to just one person. Because that's the common denominator with all these morals. Pick yourself up by the bootstrap. Don't kill people. Don't be jealous of other people. That's the common denominator, is it's self-criticism, and it's under the implication that humans operate of free will, and most importantly, operate of free will independently. But when you say treat others the way you want to be treated, you're now opening things up to the group. You're saying that as a group, we all are going to treat each other in a proper way. Think about how substantial that is of a step. And that's what the fulfillment is of that commandment. And, there's a lot of Christians that don't follow that, that still are kind of living in that past overly justice mindset of things, overly and we're kind of seeing that heat up. We're seeing like a very strict system, a very scant world emerging, where a lot of the progress towards that is starting to slip away, and you wonder what that could mean and what's next. What's next? What would be next? Because that's always what I'm always thinking about what's next. I'm thinking about what's post, not what is or what was. I always have been curious about the future. The future is really the most important thing, really. But I think that's just, it's amazing and it's beautiful to understand that that's really the core teaching, the core bedrock is care about other people. Treat the poorest among you like anyone else. Don't treat somebody differently just because they look a certain way or they act a certain way or they dress a certain way, right? You see what I mean? And it's those things that people have actually been least effective at translating into, even lots of religious people do not grasp it. They miss it, and they tend to see things through that lens of effort, And I think there's honestly not even enough time to talk about all this stuff, but I want to try to tie it into the idea of who's going to heaven or not. And if God is judging us in the 21st century the exact same way he would judge people in the past, which I would assume God would have to have some nuance to, because nowadays you have a plethora of addictions to choose from. And there's so much temptation, and there's actually such a large percentage of people who are wealthier than ever before. And we know that wealth results in sin. It's said in the Bible that it's basically nearly impossible for somebody who's rich to enter heaven, and they'd have to sell everything that they have in order to get there. So that's a very serious statement. And so is when you think about the progress of humanity, when you think about the progress that humanity has made, we've made more wealth available. And so what does that implicate? There's a larger percentage of excessively rich people. It's kind of narrowing, because you used to have a middle class and an upper class, but now it's basically just mega rich and then dirt poor. But there's a pretty large cohort of the mega rich now. And you have to wonder, what is that doing? It's creating a completely different judging framework, you and the problem is with these statements is somebody who's rich, you're often born into it. You're born into wealth, and that is a large determiner of where you're going to end up. And so that's tricky, because you didn't we don't ask for it. If you're born rich, you're pampered and you're spoiled and you're used to that, and then now it's automatically harder for you to get into heaven. Now all of a sudden you have to give up all your things and renounce everything just to make it into heaven, and chances are you're not going to do that. So how is that fair? I honestly think it's more of a word on transmutation and transition, because it's the idea of like transferring yourself, if that makes sense. That's kind of what the idea, like, it's, you're literally, you're taking wealth and you're ridding it, and you're changing as a person. If a rich person actually sold everything that they owned and gave it to the poor, they would change as a person. They would fundamentally have a changed heart and a changed mind and a changed soul. They would not be the same person. Let's not get it twisted. Like, there would be a change, a full transmutation. And I think that's probably what that reading is saying. It's talking about the need for a transition or a transmutation. But it's also speaking to, just, again, the absurdity of wealth and how it doesn't really matter, and, all that good stuff that we're already kind of aware of, and how, But it's that thing about judgment and how, 300 years ago, it just easier for someone to make it into heaven because they didn't have any of these temptations. And if a soul is born in the 21st century, now due to a higher likelihood of them being wealthy and just getting addicted, which might not even be their own fault, it may be their family's fault, obviously society at large for, allowing gambling, allowing the lottery, allowing these things and promoting them, you promote sin. And then how is that a person's fault? So I would hope that God kind of has like a nuance to that, because we're all very lost now, I think. I think a lot of us have fallen to these different things that they're tricky. They're tricky to navigate. But I would hope that God has understanding, because there's more humans now than ever before, which means there's more souls incarnate on this planet. And it just seems cruel to me that, like, most of them would be going to hell. It seems cruel. But yeah, I mean, if we're really basing it off of how things are, there would be like just billions of people just going to hell, and that seems like, it seems horrible. So I would hope that God's judgment is more nuanced, or like has context to it, and doesn't just like, just because someone was born 300 years ago and they were like, I don't really know how things worked, but I think people were just like essentially slaves. I mean, you had some money, but you were never able to actually move up or out of your situation, and then basically just lived as a slave. I mean, like, money existed, but you like worked, and then you had to pay like a crazy tax, or it was, and those people, like, it was so much easier to make it to heaven then. But then now it's like hard for us. I don't know. Like, I think a lot of us were humans, and like, how do you what is trying your best? What is actually your best? Because that's what a lot of people say to this point, and I agree with it. It's like, okay, well, if you try your best, not everybody's equal. Some people just, you don't have the same mental bandwidth. They're not going to be as good. They're going to fall to sin. They're going to succumb to the temptations of the flesh. And other people are going to be better. But, does that mean that you just, everybody who isn't, even if they're trying their best? You know what I mean? And it also begs the question of, if people are trying their best, which it's probably no. I mean, even the people who say they're trying their best, they're probably not. And then the last question is, if free will isn't real, then how can you can't try your best. There's no trying your best, because you're just, we're all like succumb to whatever happens. And so I think it's a tricky thing. It's definitely a tricky thing, And so I guess, I don't know, I don't even think GPT is really going to be able to help me that much. I'm really annoyed I didn't end up doing the transcript, because this one I'm incredibly interested in doing, so I may attempt to figure out how to do it on this old iPhone 7 Plus. Yeah, 7 Plus. I don't know. For a second I thought I got the thing wrong. I hope I can do it on here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, which is kind of a shame. And I know the CPU is going to be pretty slow at the transcription, but I'm pretty hopeful. Like, I really would like to be able to get this one transcribed and see what GPT has to say, because I'm pretty, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I liked how this episode went. I wasn't really sure how it was going to go, but I mean, this kind of stuff, I've never really thought about it or said any of it before, and it just came to me just now. So I don't know. I don't really know what to say to that, other than I'm obviously, like, grateful. I'm grateful that that happened and that the episode turned out good and stuff. But yeah, it's just good to find, like, to know I'm an artist and to finally find my art, even though I know it's going to be a while before I even see its fullest potential. It's been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So, see you, schla.